All right. Wow. I guess I have 10 minutes to talk about something I've been working on for a year and a half. So this is by no means nerve-wracking. um, uh, it's a pleasure to be here. And this work is in collaboration with an institute called Technology Enhanced Learning and Online Strategy at Virginia Tech. It's a consortium of instructional designers and technologists. And I'm a PhD student at the Department of Computer Science at Virginia Tech. And me, my advisor Scott, and my research supervisor Bob have been um, basically working on this one idea, which is how do we basically measure the utilization of a learning management system in a way that does not necessarily lose precision, but makes a significant gain in interpretive power as well. And so that's sort of the elevator pitch of this paper, if I can make one, is that we have about 1,327 courses at Virginia that were offered between 2015 and 19 at Virginia Tech, and we assign each of them a rating, an ordinal rating, low, medium, or high, and that reflects how in depth that course uses, or how deeply that course uses, or how thoroughly the resources of a learning management system, in this case Canvas, that has been in use at Virginia Tech since I think middle of 2015. And then we take those ratings and we hypothesis test those ratings against about 9 of those properties of those courses. Those properties include, those properties are of all sorts of things, like it's a broad contextual inquiry that includes modality, participation, logistics, and outcomes. So we're going to go through all of that. And it turns out to be a really helpful tool in a number of different ways, and we'll just discuss those 2 use cases real quick as well. All right, so I'm going to skip over contents. And so what motivated our choice of the problem domain? Real quick. So service-based learning management systems, your Canvases, Blackboard Learn, Moodles, they are increasingly, much more so in the recent decade, they're the primary infrastructure for all sorts of applications at institutions of higher learning. That includes class management, productivity, communication, and assessment. And with that, there is a peculiar phenomenon which that's happening, which is that the market of these learning management systems is increasingly consolidating around 2 or 3 giant app ecosystems. So these 3 big learning management systems that you see on the screen there, they represent app ecosystems. They allow very comfortable integration of third-party apps and tools that, so with those 2 phenomena, with those 2 phenomena, I think there's a parallel phenomenon, which is that the data volumes that are available for us to analyze are increasingly challenging, and there are a variety of reasons for those. The data sources are increasingly diverse. There's site content, app metadata, time, sort of team drives, and social media. There are audio and video specific platforms. Simultaneously with that, there are a large number of potential LMS use contexts. And yet again, simultaneously with that, there's actually very little consensus on how you measure the utilization, the overall utilization of a learning management system, and then how do you test claims about pedagogy, about the efficacy of an instructional tool, and certainly at scale. So just to do a very quick survey of what's already been done in this domain, what we identified as a need was basically because there are these 2 giant bodies of prior literature, one from human factors and one from information systems, and both of them are concerned with learning management system adoption. They're interested in what are the key drivers of faculty members trying to adopt a new learning management system, and what makes it easy or difficult. And these studies have been conducted on Blackboard, WebCT, Canvas, and people have identified this huge set of contextual variables like obviously self-perceived usability, ease of use, the availability of training and support resources for faculty members. A lot of it has to do with mobile app UX and ubiquitous access of these resources. A huge factor there is cognitive burden of discovery, and sometimes uh, and then information systems literature also has been, looking at LMS success in a slightly more quantitative fashion, but nonetheless, one big limitation of these studies is that these rely on self-reported use, and they are their methods of measurement are often not very standard. And then the learning analytics community has simultaneously been noticing a somewhat limited or non-existent capacity for when it comes to native LMS apps for analysis and visualization. And that's true even as there's like a large body of work on like log analyses, social media analyses, and predicting student engagement, and designing tools that enhance the capacity of the LMS for very specific pedagogies. So it's an interesting dilemma, and I guess one way we thought we could help was to come up with this taxonomy. So in collaboration with the instructional designers, we said let's start by dividing up the use context space based on anecdotal evidence that they have gathered through years and years at their job as instructional designers, and in talking with faculty members and doing a lot of LMS evangelism. And so this is a pretty simple sort of first principles taxonomy. So for instance, if when it comes to announcements, the course gets a 0 or a low if there are no announcements on the Canvas site. If there are only placeholder announcements or schedules, it gets a 1. And if there's at least one announcement per week or per course instrument, it gets a 2. And so these are 9, in fact 7 LMS resources, but 9 different use contexts. And this taxonomy has feature parity. It can apply pretty easily to, and it's very extensible and can apply easily to Scholar, and we're already starting to do those experiments as well. Although for this study, we're going to limit ourselves to Canvas. So, and you can see that we cover a decent variety of LMS resources. And okay, so what is depth of use then? If we already have that taxonomy, well, we need to combine all of these numbers, these 9 numbers for any course, and then come up with a single low, medium, or high rating. So that's what we call depth of use, or DOU. It's an ordinal rating, and ordinal just means low, medium, or high. And so right away, for every course, we have 10 numbers. We have the 9 resource DOUs as well as the 1 low, medium, high rating that we would call the overall DOU, let's say. And then there are a bunch of choices that we very intentionally built into the system, and this is a very elementary sort of first principles logic framework. And all it really does is that. So let me just move this here. Okay, so the idea here is super basic, and it is basically to identify any pairs of resource DOUs that we think could go together, and it does not have to be the case. But often instructional designers ended up pairing assignment delivery and submission because both of them ended up mattering. Both of them turned out to matter equally for the overall DOU, and so and then you get a choice as to whether you pick the maximum or the floored average, and so you get a choice for both DOU pairings and DOU weights, and then you essentially compute a floored average at the very end. And any resource DOUs that are left out in the process can also be averaged, and you get a very nice sort of ordinal rating of overall LMS use. So then the study structure is sort of pretty simple. So the top left corner is sort of this whole spiel that I made about DOU estimation, and then as soon as you get the overall LMS DOU, you pass it on to this contextual inquiry, which is nothing more on the top right there, and you test a bunch of these hypotheses, and we'll go through those variables real quick, but they concern modality, participation, logistics, outcomes, and Okay, right. Wow, I'm really, really slow here. So the four research questions that we looked at, this is the contextual variable space. And so let me just talk about, yeah, so we have about 1,327 courses. About 70% of them are undergraduate. Most of them, about 88%, end up use the traditional face-to-face in-class lecture format. About 28% of them have faculty who have gone through some sort of digital skills training or coursework. And then so let me just go through the key takeaways real quick, because I do want to get to the use cases, and I apologize if I go a little bit over time. But basically, there were three key takeaways that appeared over and over again in this exercise, which is the need for scale, interoperability, and ubiquitous access. Those are the three main drivers, and the interaction between these needs often drives faculty to aim for like a better LMS or a collection of apps that more accurately reflect their pedagogical needs. And we're gonna how does this help CS educators and designers? And just a couple of really quick use cases here. The primary use that we found, one of them for faculty members, was this idea of a cost-benefit analysis when it comes to any instructional tool, whether it is native to an LMS or an external one. And so a good example is announcements versus mailing lists. We found that as enrollment increases, the Canvas announcements use increases quite massively. Mailing lists become incredibly inefficient and hard to scale as class size increases. But when it comes to Piazza versus Canvas discussions, a lot of CS faculty here at Virginia Tech really prefer Piazza because of its relatively sophisticated social tagging and content processing features. Canvas discussions is a somewhat does not yet offer those features in their discussions app. And then and this was another very useful conclusion for us was this, looking at the third-party app use by the sort of course clusters. Like Piazza is super popular with software engineering folks and data mining and computer systems. And then you go down the list and OpenDSA, WebGAT, a lot of these tools. What we found was that a lot of these tools lacked one-to-many LTI connections, which is a very key idea. It lets you collaborate across courses. It allows you to multiply the same idea.
Sorry, Taha. I think you need to wrap up to make sure there is enough time left for the next speaker, and we have a few minutes for a couple of questions. So sorry for interrupting.
Not a problem. All right. I'm gonna okay. I think my point is made here. I'm gonna switch to use case 2 there real quick. So and this is something we have found more evidence for more recently with when we were supposed to do pre and post COVID analyses and try and do a lot of planning for fall 2020. The upper level management of IT department at Virginia Tech ended up using DOU a lot. One reason was that the low adoption micro cohort or the cohort had some very interesting, very specific cases, like the junk drive case, where the course site is being used as a file drive, or it's gradebook only, or the course is just a collection of hyperlinks to third-party apps, and Canvas is not being used as full as potentials. And those three cohorts micro cohorts end up requiring very specific interventions. And it was nice to have a data-driven signal of those courses. And then resource allocation. Some of those, a very simple reading of those hypothesis tests would let you compare, let's say, the availability of teaching assistants versus professional development, and you can, those results are the ones in the paper are stable against sort of regression testing and path analysis. So any standard battery of tests would work with those. With this strategy, and it seems like a very interesting way to sort of compare ideas when it comes to LMS evangelism and resource allocation.